Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyathela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, what should President Cyril Ramaphosa's approach be when he meets with US President Donald Trump? How does he mend relations with the US while not compromising on our values and our sovereignty? The SACP's Mapaila speaks to us about what they think the president's approach should be. Also on the show, why is the KZN Premier calling and urging the provincial government of KZN and municipalities to start banking with Ithala, when the municipal legislation is clear that local governments must bank only with a fully registered bank? Isn't this a creation of a VBS scenario? The KZN Premier Thami Ntuli joins us. And then later, new board chairpersons of SETAs have been appointed by the Higher Education Minister, but there are some names there that have raised some eyebrows. ANC Chair Gwede Mantashe's son appears on the list of new board chairpersons. Mantashe's advisor has also been appointed as a board chair of one of the SETAs. When the EFF Member of Parliament Sihlelonzi tried to ask the Higher Education DG about this in Parliament, he was kicked out of the Portfolio Committee meeting. Why? Well, the chair of that Portfolio Committee meeting, Letsie, will join us. But first, my comment. So, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be meeting with US President Donald Trump next week. The meeting is finally happening. We know how difficult it was for our former ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool, to get audience with senior officials in the Trump administration. After he was expelled, the president announced businessman Mcebisi Jonas would be South Africa's special envoy to the United States, tasked with promoting a healthy working relationship between South Africa and the US after tensions soared. In fact, they soured as well between these two nations. But we haven't seen him start the work yet, or even travel to the US, unless things have been kept under wraps. What's been concerning, though, is that the relations between the two countries have continued to deteriorate. President Trump recently insisted on calling white Afrikaners who left South Africa refugees and claimed that they were being killed in South Africa. He said there's a genocide. So he has continued to stick to the lies that have been told, even when he has been told that it's not true. So finally, the president will be meeting with him next week to set the record straight, also on that issue. The presidency says they are hopeful that this will be a fruitful meeting.
I think most importantly, it's to understand the purpose of the meeting, which is an opportunity to reset the relationship between South Africa and the US, which we've always identified as strategic between the two countries. And it is fantastic that that exercise will commence in earnest at the highest level of leadership between the two countries. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, you have a myriad of issues ranging from bilateral trade to geopolitical issues, and of course, issues of concern, albeit misinformed, if you like, with respect to what is happening in our country. President Ramaphosa will certainly use the opportunity to affirm what he has said before to President Trump with respect to the so-called white genocide, which, as we all know, is patently false.
Now, the EFF is not as hopeful as the presidency spokesperson. In fact, the party released a statement earlier today saying while it's normal for heads of state to interact on a variety of diplomatic, trade and economic issues of importance, the context of this visit by our president is a clear attempt by President Donald Trump to undermine South Africa and dictate the form and pace of our transformation initiatives. The EFF, in fact, makes a point in that statement that from Trump's recent media briefing, the sole intention of the visit by South Africa would be for our nation's leaders to account regarding a non-existent genocide of Afrikaners in our country. This is what President Trump said in that briefing this week.
South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place.
So the question is this an invitation or is it a summon? Has our president been invited or has he been summoned? Here's what the minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, said earlier today.
We are not going to the US on our own. We have been invited by President Trump. He is the one who made the public announcement that he is going to meet with us next week. So there is no one who invites a guest to mistreat them. So we are expecting the highest level of decorum and necessary protocols to be accorded. It doesn't mean we'll agree in all matters, we'll differ, but we believe that our relationship with the US is mutually beneficial. There are more than 600 US companies here in the country. Part of their largest automakers are in the country. Part of their biggest electronics and telecoms companies are also big investors in these countries, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Microsoft. They are here in their huge sizes and they continue to make investment. South African companies are also invested in the US.
Yeah, so here's the reality. President Donald Trump is a transactional leader. When he negotiates, he expects something. So it's not enough to explain to him why we have the race-based legislation that we have. It's not enough to try and explain that it's not true that there's a genocide in South Africa. It's not enough to explain why the South African government took Israel to the ICJ. So the question is, what should the president be willing to compromise on? What should he be willing to transact with? Because there's a lot that the US is unhappy about. And I wonder what foreign policy concessions South Africa is willing to make to amend the ties with the US. And those South Africa must not make concessions on. So that's the question we're asking you this evening. What should President Cyril Ramaphosa's approach to this meeting be? Do you drop the ICJ case, the transformation policies? Do you give the US a minerals deal? What should the president be willing to negotiate and not willing to negotiate? I think all of us agree that we must mend our relations with the US, but not in a way that compromises on our values and our sovereignty. You can share your thoughts with us by sending us a WhatsApp voice note on 078-459-1897. Tell us your name and surname and where you're sending that voice note from. And please keep them at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. So President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to meet with the US President next week following months of heightened tensions between the two countries. The President will embark on a working visit to the United States from the 19th to the 22nd of May. The SACP General Secretary Solly Mapaila joins me now in studio. Solly, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you.
So the President finally will have an audience with the US President Donald Trump next week. Are you hopeful as the SACP that this is an opportunity to resolve the tensions that have existed for so long between the two countries?
Well, we wish him well, but we don't think the American leadership will take into their heart of hearts the issues concerning South Africa. It is clear they've decided to disrupt our democracy. They are planning something big against us, and I think it's obvious. You can see from the choice of words that the President of America uses against us. He says there's a genocide taking place in this country against white farmers. I mean, this is big stuff, genocide. What is their intention behind the concept of genocide? And I think that whilst we'll commend the President for taking the initiative or for continuing to open the lines of engagements at diplomatic level, we should not be naive about what the US government has become. Firstly, it's a government under Trump, even before Trump, by the way, but under Trump, it's a government that do not respect law, their own laws, international law, or let alone international law. So they have no rule book. They've thrown it away. So engaging with such kind of a person, on your way back, they decide something else, depending on who briefs them. So we believe that at the moment, given the method of Trump's diplomacy, we should not go there to sell our country, because that's what he's looking for.
Yeah.
For you to resolve any other problem with him, he needs a so-called deal. And I don't think that our government should succumb to those kind of intentions of the American government.
And he's a deal maker. I mean, he's always been transactional whenever he even meets with other heads of state. So then what should then be our approach? Because I think it would be naive of our delegation that leaves for the US to think they're going to sit there and try to explain to Donald Trump that here's the reason why we've got race-based policies. Here's the reason why we went to the ICJ and tried to explain that there's no genocide. He's been told many times that it's not true. It's false, and yet he still repeats it. So you've got to transact with something. So what should they be willing to transact with, and what should they not be willing to transact with?
Well, of course, we can't send them to go and transact on our behalf. Or certainly, we shouldn't be transactional in our diplomacy, because we can never be independent. I mean, the US is a big economy. So if you go on a transactional ideas, you are not at the same level. They run at a 36 trillion US dollar deficit budget. So that's 15 times more than the GDP of the African continent. So there's nothing you can go there and think you can transact with them. So the idea of bringing back the international rule book, it's important to assert our authority when we talk with them, but it will be meaningless to Trump. The man signed 206 decrees, 6 hours into office. So turning back every other thing without even consulting Congress. This we never thought it's possible. But he has made it clear that it is possible. It is within his powers as the President of the US. He has so-called unlimited powers. We have thought these are unlimited powers within the confines of the US, but now he's showing the world that no one can stop him. So engaging with Trump at diplomatic level is not useful. So we don't know, for instance, the fellows around him, like this South African boy, Elon Musk, richest boy in the world, or richest man in the world, so to speak. They're the ones that, for instance, want certain things here. Our lithium, for instance, they're after that. Because we've got some of the best lithium deposits in the country. Our belt into Zimbabwe is one of the biggest in the world. And it's an important element in the production of electronic vehicles, for instance, and other electronic gadgets. And given the way the world is going, this is very important for them. And of course, we also have huge deposit of coal. And Trump is following both the new economies and the old economies. So there is something that they can transact about, but it's not our idea that they should go there to transact with Trump.
And the US government has said, in fact, Trump himself said he's interested in a minerals deal of sorts on the African continent. And I wonder if that's going to come up in this meeting. Do you have confidence, though, that the president will be able to stand his ground? He said before that we will not be bullied. As the SACP, do you think he can stand his ground with Trump sitting across him?
Well, look, nothing stops him from asserting our independence.
Can he, though?
Of course, he has the right. But the point is, it's whether he can do it in the meeting or not. It's of no consequence with Trump. I mean, look at how he treated Zelensky. But Zelensky ultimately agreed, because Zelensky at the time didn't understand the deal. The deal was that the Ukrainian minerals will be shared with the American companies. And on the basis of that, the American government will then be able to send their military to protect their so-called business in Ukraine. In that regard, they are already in Ukraine, albeit through defending their own interest in Ukraine. And therefore, it will not be easy for the Russians, for instance, to attack Ukraine, knowing that they will be attacking American, or they will be bypassing American defense systems. So that was the thing, but I think they cleared that. With us, Trump wants this country. It's quite clear. They understand the significance of this country in the geostrategic politics, so he's gunning for it. So this thing of using such harsh words as genocide and bringing in this group of Afrikaner so-called victims into America is to force us to compromise. And that's the thing that President Ramaphosa and his team should not do.
So what would be your advice to him? I mean, the EFF in their statement today are saying that this is not even an invitation, it's a summon. When you look at what he says even during the media briefing this week, he says, yeah, I hear they'll be coming to see me, I'll hear what they say, when he was talking about the issue of genocide. So the EFF believes actually we're being summoned there as opposed to come, let's talk like equals. What would be your advice as the president prepares for that meeting?
Well, look, you can't advise the president to go and have a discussion with...
well, he's a president that listens,
No. The president, no, I'm not disrespecting our president. Our president is okay as president. But the point is, the person is going to meet with is a deranged leader. So what is the point of going to an engagement with such a fellow? So that's the point. And I think it is high time that South African diplomacy recognizes that. We must de-link, literally, from such fellows as Trump.
But how? We need the US market.
No, we've got enough markets in the world. There are enough markets in the world. We can create alternative markets. The first and biggest market is a market in South Africa to meet the needs of South Africans. So that's where the problem has been. That is why we are chasing markets when our people are poor. When we talk about economic development, for instance, you start with the basics in your own country. We can't feed our people, we can't clothe our people, we can't house our people, we can't build enough roads for our people. That on its own is an unlimited market for your own development. Others, it's a bonus. So you recast your economy differently. So in this case, we're joining a freeway of highly developed countries who are using exploitation of people and countries for their own well-being. In fact, for enrichment, in this case of Trump, of a minority of billionaires, the tech billionaires that he has surrounded himself now with. I mean, I listened to Minister Kumbuzo talking about some of the companies that US companies that are highly invested here. These are tech companies that are protected by Trump. These are the fellows that actually funded his own campaign. So you're not going to get anything out of that except subjugation and being bullied. So that's what's going to happen in the. If you read some of literature about the bullying of the American system, if you read, for instance, Economic Hitmen, it tells you about what this kind of trips are about. Even former president of Tanzania indicated this thing when he left office about the bullying tendencies of these big countries like America. We have to de-link and engage with people who respect us as people, as economies, and who also respect diplomacy.
Let's talk about the issue of land as well, because that's something that's definitely going to come up, because Trump speaks about the confiscation of land from white Afrikaners. You have resolved with Contra Lesser to jointly mobilize for a referendum to resolve the land question. Why a referendum, and would that help?
Well, referendum, yes, it will help, because what it will do, it will tell parliamentarians the ultimate voice of the people of this country who are landless. As we speak in South Africa today, more than 70% of the land remains, that is arable land, remains in the hands of white males. So when we talk about crisis of poverty that we're trying to address politically, even through government, and you are not controlling arable land where you plow food, it's unacceptable.
But how is the referendum going to help?
No, the referendum is becomes the ultimate decision-making to instruct Parliament to make appropriate laws in conformity with the wishes of the country. Because at the moment we have got a parliamentary process which is quite insufficient, and the parties in parliament have decided to take this question to court, left, right and center, delaying the process towards land transfer to the original owners, even their custodians, the traditional leaders. So the people as a whole who are supposed to benefit from the land do not benefit from it. As a result, the restitution process, which has been condemned even by bourgeois scholars in this country, who have indicated that if we follow that process, it will take us 300 years to redistribute the land sufficiently, not to return back the land to the original owners, but just sufficient for the people to live on the land. But the biggest thing, Clement, is that the land is the primary wealth of any nation. And our own land in this country is not in our hands, hence we are poor.
I agree with you, but how is a referendum going to help? Because ultimately at the end of the day, parliamentarians are the ones that are going to vote on whatever legislation.
No, the referendum works in this way. The referendum will give the people the direction about what Parliament must do. So it will not be another debate by Parliament. Parliament, so in the referendum, for instance, there could be few questions that the nation must answer in the vote. So the result of that vote should then be implemented by Parliament. So Parliament must draft appropriate legislation for the implementation of that. Under the current dispensation, it is impossible to transfer the land back to its rightful owners.
But Parliament is an independent institution. You can have 10 million people who come and vote and say, this is what we want. At the end of the day, that must be considered by Parliament and duly voted by Parliament. And I guess my point is, your alliance partner, ANC, is in a coalition with the DA, a party that doesn't believe in the land reform policies of the ANC government. So when you get to Parliament, the ANC doesn't even have enough support.
Well, Clement, let's put it this way. A referendum will be based on two questions, essentially, yes or no. All right. Under the no, there will be reasons. Under the yes, there will be reasons. Then the nation decides, and therefore the nation instructs Parliament, irrespective of parties in Parliament. And any party that will go and defy a yes vote of the people will be booted out by the same people from being in Parliament or from governing. So that's the essence. So in other words...
that hasn't happened, hasn't. For instance, the ANC resolved land expropriation without compensation. What happens? The ANC deploys, go to Parliament and they vote for something completely different.
We left this thing into the hands of parliamentarians who decided that their party ideas are best ideas. Now we'll be bringing the people's ideas.
Well, another example, VAT. The people said, we don't want VAT. The ANC still went and said 0.5%. So what the point I'm making is, people of South Africa speak all the time, Soli. Politicians just don't care.
What we're trying to highlight here together with Contralesa is the fact that the open methods that we're using now have failed. But we're saying there's another method. That is the method of the referendum. And that method will impose its authority on Parliament. All we need is the President to concur on the question of the referendum on this question.
All right. Soli Mapaila, thank you so much for making time for us. He is the leader of the SACP. So we've got some tweets that have come through responding to the question we've been asking you tonight about what the President's approach should be as he meets with the US President Donald Trump. Dennis on Twitter says Ramaphosa should be bold and ask Donald Trump to give him free lessons on his stance on abolishing the catch and release law, which is not working in South Africa. Melikaya says President Ramaphosa performs well at such political stages. He should not compromise on South African sovereignty and associated legislation. Trade is where give and take can happen. SA is not a colony of the US. They cannot dictate policies to us. Zozo says the president should not compromise the country. The question is whether his itinerary is so empty that when Trump sends an invite, he jumps and flies to the US. Thank you so much for your tweets. You can also send your WhatsApp voice note responding to that question, and we'll play them before we wrap up the show. Stay with us here on Face the Nation. Welcome back. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Thami Ntuli is calling for provincial government and municipalities to bank with Ithala. Ntuli made the call after the Pietermaritzburg High Court ruled that the bank can continue operating while the application by the Prudential Authority to liquidate it is underway. The Premier joins us now via Zoom. Premier, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, to yourself and to the viewers at home, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. So have you urged the provincial government of KZN and municipalities to start banking with Ithala? And if so, on what basis? Because my understanding of the municipal legislation is clear that local governments must bank only with a fully registered bank.
In fact, I'm talking about the journey which, as the provincial government together with the Ithala SACP, we are trying to be on now to ensure that we have the full license, and that I'm inviting businesses, because when the PA and RA tried to liquidate Ithala, there was resounding support from all the quarters in the province. We talk about business, you talk about organizations, political parties, you talk about government institutions in support of Ithala. Then my call is that we demonstrate that by action, by ensuring that when Ithala is ready to receive their deposits, they should demonstrate by action, by banking with Ithala, because it's the right thing to do. Hence, you understand the background that this bank is a state-owned bank meant to develop the economy, especially those who are deprived from receiving financial support from other commercial banks.
Yeah. So, but Section 7.3 of the Municipal Finance Management Act prohibits a municipality from opening a bank account with an institution that is not a registered bank in terms of the Banks Act. And Ithala is not a registered bank. So only registered banks are trusted with public resources. Are you suggesting that your call is being made for the provincial government and the municipalities to deposit and transact with the bank when it is fully registered, or are you saying they can do so now?
When it is fully registered, Clement, as a full bank, I'm making a call and invite that by action, let us demonstrate by supporting to open accounts, even the political parties, because I was not only referring to government departments and the municipalities. I was saying everyone who has laid his voice behind Ithala must demonstrate by action that when Ithala is ready to take their deposit, to have their accounts, they must demonstrate by action by opening their accounts with Ithala.
Okay, just to clarify then, Premier, so that we understand and the viewers are not confused. When you called on the municipalities and the provincial government to transact and bank with Ithala, you were not saying that must happen right now. You understand that if it were to happen right now, that would be illegal. You were saying that they must do so later when the licensing process is done and Ithala has the necessary authorization and license.
You are quite correct, Clement. You are saying exactly what I meant, because they also understand that they cannot do it now. And as we speak, Clement, I think we are aware that the PA and RA, they've appealed the decision of Judge Ngube, which was restraining them from interfering on the affairs of Ithala, because in terms of the Section 84 of the Bank Act 90 of 1990, they should have not, in fact, used the powers that they ended up using. And then the judge was categorical to say it was not a right approach for them to do so. And we are saying, as we fight to preserve Ithala, and also to ensure that Ithala is compliant in terms of a full bank license, engaging various stakeholders to assist so that we achieve that. We are therefore calling everyone to support Ithala, to strengthen Ithala by banking with Ithala.
Okay, so why has Ithala still not complied with the licensing requirements? I mean, why, for instance, are they still not even registered as a mutual bank, in your understanding?
Well, Ithala has been operating, has never, in fact, had a license, has been operating through an exemption.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the pass of a new act compelled that the issue of any bank has to, in fact, meet some compliant areas, of which Ithala has met most of them. Has submitted even the application for a full bank license. Unfortunately, it could not, in fact, land on the ears that had to understand. Hence, we are saying it's necessary that we preserve, while we prepare the issue of compliance, it's important that exemption is given, because the law of exemption is still applicable as it has been operating through exemption. So that then we prepare, we finalize the issue of the areas of compliance for Ithala, so that it will actually receive the full bank license.
Yeah, because also exemptions can be forever. At some point, the bank would have to comply and do what's required for them to be licensed. One of the things that you said yesterday was that people's money is safe with Ithala, but then there's still no guarantee from Treasury of the institution's depositor book. Isn't that what you need before you can promise people that their money is safe with the institution?
Yeah, you see, we as the provincial government, we have been in support of Ithala, even financially. And we had an engagement with a national treasurer, national minister, where we're in agreement of a guarantee. Unfortunately, we saw a communication which was pointing to a guarantee being sent to one of the banks, of which we are engaging on that, it must be according to what we agreed upon. But we are giving assurance that the people's money is safe. They will get their money from Ithala, because it's quite a complex issue, in fact, to suggest that if that guarantee is not given, there will be a problem. It has an excess of cash of more than 300 million. So in no event, the money for the people who is with the bank can be at risk by being with Ithala. The unfortunate part is that they cannot access their money, and it's unfortunate because that is destroying the human life, it's destroying the economy of the province.
Then help me understand, if Ithala is 300 million rand or so in the positive, why is the guarantee then at, and correct me if I'm wrong here, wasn't it at about 2 billion rand what was being considered? Because then that would suggest that the institution is broke.
Well, no, it's too technical. Maybe even for me, it would be too technical to elaborate on the bank terminologies on the issue of the assets, the loans, and the like, that in fact are covered by the issue of a guarantee. But in terms of the bank itself, it's a bank that is liquid. That is why that is what we're able to even prove before the court of law that this bank is liquid. While the liquidation case is still taking place, we're adamant that Ithala Bank is liquid.
So why does it need a guarantee then from Treasury? Because they said Treasury promised it's in a position to guarantee its depositor book. I think in January, Treasury said deposits would be protected by a government guarantee, and that was subject to the conclusion of the necessary technical work. And we still don't have proof of that guarantee. And I think you agree that public statements don't carry any legal obligation until there's actually evidence that says, well, this is a guarantee that we're making at Treasury, then you can't speak of it as if it's a done deal. So if Ithala is so solvent, why do they still need this guarantee? And why would Treasury say the deposits would be protected by a guarantee?
Well, Clement, hence I said we are getting too technical, but you know, when you talk about a bank or a financial institution, it does not only deals with the money which is deposited to the bank and withdrawn from the bank. It has many things that it deals with. It deals with the loans, people borrow. It deals with the issue of the assets. You see, when you talk about the guarantee, you talk about something which is much more technical on the side of other aspects of the bank. But in terms of ensuring that the customers of Ithala, their money is safe, I was mentioning that, you see, it's a different case wherein people can say we are all withdrawing our money today. And when we are withdrawing money in any bank as we want the money. That is what then we are referring to, that we need that guarantee for the entire operations and other aspects. I was mentioning, though I'm saying it's something which it's a bit technical. But the bank itself is liquid. As I've said, that is in excess of more than 300 million in terms of the available finances. So we are of the view as the provincial government that we support the stance of Ithala SOC and the board that they are a bank in good standing, except that the issue of the license is an area that ought to be attended to, and the issue of the exemption is what may assist the bank to continue operate while we finalize the issue of the exemption. That was our approach, even when we were engaging with the National Minister of Finance to say we wish to see exemption being reinstated, so that the bank will be able, in fact, Ithala SOC will be able to finalize other areas of compliance.
What is your responsibility as the KZN government? Did Treasury not engage you as the KZN government to provide the guarantee?
Exactly. We engage the Treasury so that we, in fact, appeal for the guarantee, and we were in agreement that the guarantee will be afforded Ithala SOC, except for what I've mentioned that we've seen a letter suggesting otherwise, a guarantee not being directed to where we expected. And we are still engaging even about that, because what is at the center of us as the provincial government is that we save this People's Bank that has benefited the people of KwaZulu-Natal for quite a very long. This bank has 38 branches which are in rural communities and township communities. In our strategy, in fact, to revitalize the economy of the rural and the township communities, part of it is Ithala SOC. So when we fail to preserve it, that will mean the people who are living in rural communities and in townships, they might be, in fact, deprived of an opportunity of seeing their economy also growing as other areas.
Well, KZN Premier Thami Ntuli, thank you so much for speaking to us on Face the Nation.
Thank you, Clement.
Tonight. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The EFF has condemned the conduct of chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training, Letsie, after EFF MP Sihle Lonzi was forcefully removed from a meeting. Lonzi questioned the appointment of individuals with ties to the ANC to the boards of SETAs, especially that of ANC chairperson and Minister of Mineral Resources, Gwede Mantashe's son, as a SETA board chairperson, and also his advisor, Mantashe's advisor, as SETA board chairperson. We're now joined by Letsie, who's the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education. Thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, yourselves. Good evening to the viewers of SABC, and thanks for having us.
Let's start with the EFF MP, Sihle Lonzi's removal from Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Higher Education. Why exactly was he removed?
So the meeting yesterday was convened to get a briefing from the department on what is it that they would have done in implementing the forensic investigation from Duja at construction SETA. And then when the meeting started, I indicated to members that I have received 2 letters from 2 political parties who are serving in our committee, one from Honorable Khakhaw of the DA, and one from Honorable Sihle Ngubane of the MKP. And they were asking if the list that, or the so-called leaked list that is doing the rounds, if it's true.
Yeah.
I responded to members and indicated that we have not received any list of anybody who's appointed at the SETAs, so we advise members not to reduce the meeting of Parliament to a gossip that tomorrow the minister can come and say it's not true. So the meeting then deliberated on the matters and agreed that I must write to the minister, which I did whilst in the same meeting, indicated to her that she must give us or release the list if she has appointed by Monday, 19 February. The committee agreed that we will then not speak on this matter. We'll continue with discussing the matters of the day, which was on the agenda, which was adopted. Sihle Lonzi, Mr. Lonzi was not in the meeting at the time. He arrived late. When he arrived, he then wanted to change the decision that has been taken by members of all political parties who are participating in or who are deployed to participate in the Committee on Higher Education. As the chairperson, I had the responsibility to inform him that the matter that he wants to raise has already been agreed to by the committee. It's a committee resolution. Yeah. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, but you must adhere by it because you were not there. So he continued to disrupt meetings, and we had to apply Rule 66 and Rule 70 of the National Assembly by ejecting him because he refused the presiding officer's ruling, but also was unruly when other members of all political parties in the meeting called him to order, tried politely to tell him that that matter will be referred to next week, as we have already agreed. So he refused.
The question that he was asking, though, is whether the DG of Higher Education is aware that Gwede Mantashe's son has been appointed as the chair of one of the SETA boards. Why couldn't the DG answer that question? I mean, from the recording I saw of that meeting, you don't give the DG the opportunity to respond for himself if he's willing to respond to that question or not. But the question was not about whether or not he makes the appointments. The question was whether he is aware that appointments have been made and aware that Gwede Mantashe's son has been appointed as the chair of the SETA board and that his advisor has also been appointed. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make, Tebogo, is that is an issue that has really concerned a lot of South Africans. Many people have seen that list that has been leaked, and the question they've had is, oh my goodness, is this true? Couldn't it have worked for an assurance to come from a DG of Higher Education to say, I can't get into the details, the minister will come and explain what happened because she makes the appointments, but here's what I can share with South Africans who are rightfully concerned about these appointments that are really raising eyebrows? Because that's what Parliament is there for, right?
Yeah, no, the first thing we must clarify is that that's not the question he asked. I think the question he asked was that, DG, are you aware of the appointments that have been made? And he only mentioned the name of Minister Mantashe's child when he was being evicted. I think if you can check the video, it will confirm that part. But members of the Portfolio Committee who agreed, who took a resolution, had many questions to ask to the DG. But we correctly said the DG has got, the department has got absolutely no role to play in the appointment of anybody in the SETAs. That is Section 11 of the Skills Development Act that gives the minister. We had then agreed that asking the DG will be asking for gossip in Parliament. The DG does not play a role. The minister does not report to the DG. If the minister was reporting to the DG, would have allowed the DG to say, yes, the minister has appointed and has sent me the list, but the minister has no obligation to send to the DG, has no obligation to send, and therefore we said we will now be reducing the meeting to gossip.
But who do the SETAs then respond and report to? Do they report to the minister? Do they report to the DG? Because the DG is the accounting officer, isn't it? Even though appointments are made by the minister, who interfaces with the SETAs? It's not the minister, it's the DG who's the accounting officer. So it would be weird for us to say, oh, the minister makes the appointment, but the DG of the department has no idea of what appointments have been made, to which SETAs and which board chairpersons have been appointed. Wouldn't that be weird?
It's actually not true. The accounting authorities of the SETAs account to the minister. The legislation is clear that the DG plays no role in the even interfacing. The DG can't even tell the board of any SETA that they must do X, Y, and Z, because legislation is very clear that the minister will interface with the board chair or the accounting authority chair of the SETA, and not anybody else in that space. So Skills Development Act was crafted in that way. Why? We can ask ourselves those questions, but the DG does not play any role, even on accountability of it.
So so the SETAs and who looks at whether or not the SETAs are responding to the needs and the mandate that they have? I mean, the minister, as the executive authority, normally ministers would rely on their DGs or rely on the officials from the department. In this case, is that solely the responsibility of the minister to also measure whether or not the SETAs are meeting their targets? Are they doing their work?
Yeah, the CEOs of the SETAs will then report to a branch of the department called the skills branch on APPs and all of that. But we were talking about the accounting authority of the SETAs, where the DG plays absolutely no role. The Skills Development Act is very clear that the interface there is between the minister and the board chair of that particular SETA.
So you're saying the SETAs respond to the department?
Yeah, on the APPs and targets.
Okay.
They respond.
Okay, they respond to the department.
Yeah, that is the management. The CEO of the SETA will then, who's responsible for the annual performance plans or their targets that they would have reached, they report to the department as far as that is concerned. But governance of it, the department plays no role there.
Okay, let me ask you then about what has been the concern here. Are you aware? My understanding is that you've written this letter. I've seen the letter you wrote to the Minister of Higher Education. I mean, if it's true that Gwede Mantashe, who is the chairperson of the ANC, has a son that is appointed as a board chair for one of the SETAs, his advisor is appointed as one of the board chairs of the SETAs, wouldn't that concern you as the portfolio committee?
It will concern us if it's true. That is why we have written to the minister to confirm if indeed this is true, and we are going to engage with her. We have asked her to be available on Wednesday to engage with the committee on all these concerns that members would have raised. Those are serious concerns that members would have raised, and we want them to direct them to the relevant person who's the minister. If it's true, then I would be very concerned. I'm hoping that it's not true, because then we would have big problems with the accounting of these people who would be responding to the minister.
Have you seen the list of the board chairs of the SETAs? I mean, have you seen that it's full of, it looks like it's KZN ANC cadres?
I've not seen the list of the appointed people. I've seen the so-called leaked list. which I'm sure you are referring to. The list that the minister must confirm is the one that we wrote to her about yesterday to confirm if it's indeed true. We've given until Monday. But if the leaked list is anything, that we must rely on, then indeed we're very worried.
Okay, so as the portfolio committee, have you been made aware of any decision the higher education minister has taken reversing some of the board appointments? Because that's what we are being sent now. We've been sent a letter that we are told that has been sent to the advisor of Gwedemantashe. This is the withdrawal now of that appointment. I'm told that there are some names that have been withdrawn as well. What do you know? What can you share with us as the portfolio committee chair? What's been communicated to you?
Nothing has been communicated to us. We're waiting the minister to write to us. I've seen the letter that you are talking about. I've seen it on social media just now before we came on air. I don't know how true is it.
Okay.
But we have written officially to the minister for her to respond to us, and we're hoping that even what we are seeing there is fake news.
All right. Letsie, thank you so much for making time for us. Hopefully we'll have the minister clarify and confirm whether or not indeed she has withdrawn some of these appointments that have been made to the boards of the various SETAs. Thank you so much for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Tuesday next week at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.